whatnot. So the first part, I'm just going to quickly go through this slideshow that has some examples and about conferencing with students. So this is information that you have seen before. I'm just reminding you of it, that the top one is something that I think we need reminders of a lot, is to improve the writer, not the product. I know sometimes when we sit down and look at kids' writings, we say, oh my gosh, there's so much wrong with this piece of writing, and how can we better the information to make it a better piece? And really we need to take a look back and say, okay, what does this writer need right now that we can teach them that can carry over into many pieces of writing? So that's something that we want to focus on, is the writer, not the product. Knowing that conferencing is individualized instruction, a time to listen and to get to know the writer, and then a time to teach. We have our 4 phases of a conference: research, decide, teach, and record. Today we're going to look mainly at the decide and teach phase. So when we're sitting down with writers, it's nice to kind of give them a little bit of ownership and say, you know, what are you working on as a writer? And let them say to you, I'm working on, you know, adding details, I'm working on a conclusion, I'm working on an introduction. That may not be where you want to take their conference, but at least, you know, yeah, I can tell that you're working on that introduction. I see that you've included this. That's awesome. One thing that I noticed in your writing, and then take them down the path of something that you might want to work with them on. So it doesn't always have to be conferencing with them on what the mini lesson was for that day. And with that being said, well, I'll go into that. So thinking what would help the writer most at this time. And then think about the general idea. Is it the introduction? Is it the conclusion? Is it conventions? And then from there, narrowing it down. So what about the conclusion? Does this kid need main idea and detail, knowing that in the conclusion there's only main ideas? Do they need to focus on a lead and go through the different examples of leads? So really narrowing down what you want to teach them in a conference so that it's a very meaningful, productive conference. And then you're going to determine how to teach. So once you've decided what to teach, you're going to determine how to teach. You want to make sure that you're using clear, concise language, and then step-by-step visuals. We kind of touched on that out there. Just we're teaching that visual and constantly going back to that visual. Every phase of your conference, you're revisiting it so that kids will get that embedded in their brain so that they can take it with them from several different writings. So when we're looking at the teach phase, the first part is that modeling. And as you're modeling, we're thinking aloud. Tell students what you're doing. And you're constantly referring back to that visual. You're going to hear me say that over and over and over. Refer back to that visual. Guided practice, that gradual release. Do some together. Check for understanding. Constantly asking those questions to make sure that they're understanding what you're saying. In the video that you're going to see that I do with a student, I was asking a lot of check for understanding questions, and I realized he was not getting it. So I had to stop and try a different approach. And it was just the visual I was using he was not understanding, so I just did a quick visual on the whiteboard, and he understood it a lot better. So knowing that it's okay if things are not going well to just stop and try again. And then the independent practice, when you send them off, make sure you refer back to that visual and then clarify the task. So what are you going to do when I leave you? I think that's something that we struggle with the most, is we've done this conference and we turn this way and our kids stop working. So we're going to brainstorm ideas on how to help with that, but making sure that we clarify the task so they know exactly what they need to do when you turn away from them. So you're going to watch a video, and just to kind of want to set you up for the video a little bit, this is a 5th grader, and we were doing informational narratives, and he had written his informational narrative on Abraham Lincoln. And one thing that you're going to see in this video is that to get them interested in this, and for my example, I wrote about Sweitzer, this amazing teacher. Okay, I want you to know that I'm not conceited. I don't think this, but I had to get them to buy in, and it was our example we did together. There's lots of false information in here. But we took the conclusion of the paper that I did and did some stuff with it, and then I let him go, and he did great for the first like 4 sentences, and then he just kept adding like a bunch of details. So one girl in the last session was like, I was really impressed with how much writing was on his paper. Well, I want you to know that that's a lot of repetitive writing and whatnot. So we had to go back and teach some main idea and details. So that's kind of what you'll see here. And there's some parts I'm going to fast forward through so you know what you're working on as a writer. I'm going to work on today.
The conclusion.
Okay, we are going to work on the conclusion. Last time we met, we talked about starting our conclusion with important parts, right?
Yeah.
And when I went back and read yours, you did a great job of starting it with important parts, but we added some things that I am not sure are necessary. So, before we even look at your paper, I want to talk about a conclusion, what a conclusion must have. A conclusion is a big idea.
Well, that's some big words.
That is some big words, because I know that in my conclusion, I only want the big idea. I don't want the little details in my conclusion. When I think about little details, Joey, I think about the things that I can see happening, okay? So I'm going to put a little eyeball here to remind me that, that's not a very good eyeball, but to remind me that I can see what's happening, okay? For example, if I were writing my story about Mrs. Sweitzer, the big idea is that Mrs. Sweitzer was a good teacher, right? That is what she was known for. She was a good teacher. Some little details are that she, her mom was a teacher. She went to college at Northwest Missouri State. So those are little tiny details. We can see her mom being a teacher. We can see her going to school at Northwest Missouri State. Does that make sense? So in our conclusion, we only want to have the big ideas. So Joy, I rewrote my conclusion right here. And in this part of my conclusion, we talked, I added some parts. So this is exactly this right here, but then I added some more. So we're just gonna, am I confusing you with all this paper?
Yeah.
Put that one off to the side. We'll just look at this one, okay? We're just gonna look at this conclusion. So I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna read sentence by sentence. What am I gonna read by?
Sentence by sentence.
Sentence by sentence. I'm not going to read the whole thing. And after each sentence, I'm going to ask myself, is that the main idea? Is that a big idea or a small little detail?
How come you didn't put no periods in those sentences?
Oh, don't worry about that one. That was something separate, okay? If it is a big idea, Joey, I'm going to highlight it in yellow.
Okay.
Yellow means what?
Big idea.
Big idea. What is mostly about. If it's a detail, I'm going to highlight it in pink, okay?
There's a pink in there.
Oh, I got one. I think so. All right, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to do the first couple, and then we're going to do a little bit together, okay?
Okay.
All right, so it says, Allie Sweitzer was known for her amazing teaching. I'm thinking that this is a big idea because I can't see the amazing teaching. That's not a small, I can't see her teaching math. That doesn't talk about teaching math. That doesn't talk about teaching reading. This is a small idea. So I'm going to highlight it in yellow because it's a big idea.
You
Okay.
just kind of said like small idea, a detail.
I what?
It sounded like you said detail in there when you were saying big idea.
Oh. So then the next sentence is, she won many awards and celebrated with her students. So I'm thinking to myself, can I see her winning an award and getting a plaque and then having a party with her students? I can see that. So that's not really a big idea. I think that's a small detail. Would you agree with that, Joey? Why would you say it's a small detail?
I can't even describe why.
A small detail is something that we can see happening, and it's taking a big idea and putting it, so I think if I have a little funnel, Joey, if I think, or like a tornado, you know what a tornado is?
Yeah.
You know how a tornado kind of goes like this?
Mm-hmm.
I think about, here's my big idea. Mrs. Sweitzer is a good teacher, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then all my little details are right in here.
Or down there.
In my tornado. Yes. Okay? Anything that's down here, we don't want in our conclusion.
No.
So it's a small little idea that supports that part. Those small details, Joey, are going to be in this part of our story. You already have your details in this part of your story. Okay?
Now every time when I see a tornado, I might think of that.
Awesome. I hope you do. She won many awards and celebrated with her students. Her students loved working with her and appreciated how she made them work.
Big idea.
Why do you think that's a big idea?
Cause she made them feel good about.
Tell you what I did to make the students feel good. I just said overall she made her kids feel good. You are right. That is a big idea.
Can I do it?
Mm-hmm. And it says she always let them play fun games.
Small idea.
Okay, why do you think it's a small idea? A detail.
Because you can actually see that happening.
Yeah, this is my detail. It says she loved, her students loved working with her and appreciated how she made them work. And then this kind of says she let them play fun games. That goes into that smaller part of that tornado. Next line says her favorite game to play was Sorry.
Small idea.
Small idea, yeah. Why do you think it was a small detail?
Because it's about a favorite game.
Yeah, it's about that one small detailed favorite game. You are right. Pink or yellow?
Pink.
Pink.
Because that's what the details
You're
are.
right. All right. She always made kids feel confident in their work and made learning fun.
A big idea.
Okay, I would agree. So when I make my conclusion, only what in my conclusion? Do I want my big ideas in my conclusions or my details in my conclusion?
Big
I
ideas.
only want my big idea. All my details are up here in my story, just like in your story. All your details are up here. In our conclusion, we only want what?
Big ideas.
Big ideas. So what I would do if I had this on my computer, I would take this and I would not use any of where I highlighted the pink. None of those small details. I would only keep it in yellow. Okay?
You would only use them in the yellow.
Yes. So Jay, I want to look at your story now. Here is
This
your
one?
conclusion. Yep. I want you to think. What do we want in our conclusion? Big ideas. Big ideas.
Are we
Okay?
going to highlight
We
it?
are going to highlight. So I want you to think. Let's read the first sentence. Abraham Lincoln was known for his hard work. Big idea or detail?
Big.
Big idea. I agree. Abraham Lincoln loved the people of the United States.
Small. A detail.
Okay. Why do you think it's a detail?
Because the people of the United States.
Now I'm thinking of the United States. Our United States is pretty big, isn't it? So if I were to say he loved the people of Nebraska, he loved the people of Texas, he loved the people of Washington, do you think that's more detailed than he loved the people of the United States? Is that kind of a big statement? And then our tornado, we could say, I love the people of Nebraska, I love the people of Texas. So do you think him loving the people of the United States is a big idea or a small detail?
A big.
A big idea. Think about your tornado and where it might go on your tornado. Abraham Lincoln will be a positive influence for the people of the United States.
Big.
I agree, he'll be a positive influence. It doesn't tell us what he did to be a positive influence, it tells us that he was a positive influence. Abraham Lincoln made the people of the United States feel confident about themselves.
Big.
I agree, it doesn't say what he did it? It just tells us how he made them feel.
Well, it does say confident.
Abraham Lincoln will be known for his hard work and stopping slavery.
Big.
I agree. It didn't tell us what he did to stop slavery, but he stopped slavery. I think you just forgot that one. It goes right here.
For some reason, they're connecting.
There was a lot of people that encouraged Abraham Lincoln to study law so he could be the President of the United States.
Big. Hold on. small.
Okay, why do you think it's small?
Because you can see the people encouraging him.
Okay. One thing that I was thinking that made it seem small was that we talked about how he was studying law. So we kind of took our big idea of him being a president and went down to talk about how he studied law to become president. So ideal. After all of those people that encouraged Abraham Lincoln to study, and after all that, he became a president of the United States and the White House.
Small. Oops.
After Abraham Lincoln became a president, all of the people loved Abraham Lincoln for a long time.
Big.
Okay. How come you think that one's a big one?
Because all the people loved him, and he loved all the people.
Okay. So you didn't tell us why the people loved him. That would be a detail. You just said they loved him.
Yeah. I got a lot of big ideas.
That's good. After all of that work that he had to do was very hard for him, and he had to do all of that hard work to become a president.
Small.
I agree, yeah. We kind of already talked about the hard work that he did, huh?
Mm-hmm. I got a lot more.
I am writing a conclusion. What do I want? Big ideas or details?
Big.
Big ideas.
Just the yellow parts.
It doesn't matter what kind of story I'm writing. I could be writing a story about a personal narrative. I could be writing any type of story as long as my conclusion has the big ideas in it. Okay?
Well, he did become president of Washington, D.C. and the United
Right.
States.
Tell me what a conclusion must have in it.
The big ideas, the one in the yellow.
The yellow ideas, those big ideas. So what is your job going to be when we're done here?
To get rid of the ones with the pink.
You're absolutely right. Nice job. You can get started. And in this video, I did pull him out for the sole purpose of we were videoing, and I didn't want it to be loud and him to be distracted. But normally, we're in the classroom for it. The next part is start for early life. She had done all of her research and her information, but she didn't know how to put it together. So together we actually started the Sweitzer story and made an early life. We did it here. I hit print. She grabbed it. She had that as an example for her to look at as she went and did her paper. I turned to this girl who, I was going to conference with her next, and she had a beautiful early life done, but she did not have one period in it. So really quick, I just took what I had just done with the other student, took out the periods, and said, I love all the information you have in your story, but what are we missing? And she's like, periods, because she's always missing periods, so she knows I'm going to say that. So we went and we added periods to mine, and then she was able to take this, print it off, take it, and use that to help her in hers. Another example is when we got to the conclusion, kids were really struggling with the sentence starters and how to write their conclusion. So we wrote a conclusion on our paper, and then I highlighted the kind of how to start the sentences, and then again printed it off so that they had an example. They have all these examples in their writing folder that they can have to go back to constantly. So those are just a couple examples of how you can take the same piece and use it for several different conferences, so you're not always having to rewrite information. Any questions or anything on that? There are two in another classroom. So I was really struggling with, at the beginning of the year, how do I, get these teachers to stay on schedule at the same time, so that, because I was having the two from one class come over to the other class, but this one might have done spelling first, or just wasn't working out. So I asked the teacher that had the majority of the identified kids in it if she would mind if she just considered the other two kids her writing kids. And she said, absolutely not. We even have library once every 8 days during writing. So that was another problem, is when this class went, then their class was going, so then they were off a day, and it was just, so I went and asked the librarian. She was like, absolutely, we're doing the same thing. You know, so that's one way that I had to work around it, is just really getting everybody on board of, you have more support. I can give you more support if we're in the same class together. So, and then I also have a student with Down syndrome in this class, and he is doing the exact same thing. He did an informational narrative. He chose to do his on Rosa Parks. So we had some reading A to Z stories. We put some research in his, a little bit closer to his level, had him read about it, and then I typed up some stuff, and then his job was putting it in order. So not necessarily was he able to tell me that this is the introduction, body, conclusion, but these all go with number one. Like, all the introductions were, or, you know, the part was labeled number one, so we had to put those together. And then he glued them, and then he went and typed them on his iPad. So there was times where he was working with an adult, myself or his EA, or there was times that he was doing stuff that was at his level independently on his writing, so that EA could help support the other